Hi, welcome to the virtual orientation for the 25 RB Jay Feather by Jayco. We're going to begin the orientation on the outside of the RV, and we're going to begin near the front. First thing we'll do is open the front pass-through storage compartment and we'll take a look. In this area we'll find switching for your front accent lights here, as well as a 120 volt power supply, and you have a crank for your stabilization jacks and a crank for your electric tongue jack to use it manually. Also in this area we will find the mounting hardware for your Blackstone grill. Unfortunately at the moment the Blackstone grills still are not shipping with the RVs. Basically we have this post that will slide into this receiver here, and then on the other end of the post, this end here, you can fit this piece in there, and then when you get the grill it sits on top of this piece. Everything's connected via quick connect here, both ends, and on the trailer side we have a quick connect port right here. So that manual crank for the stabilization jack that I showed you would work on the nut on the end of the stabilization jacks. There's 4 of them on the 4 corners of the RV, and they should always be used to stabilize and never to level the RV. One thing to think about with these stabilization jacks is the use of blocking. Depending on where you're using your RV and what the site is like, how level it is, could determine how much blocking you might need. I usually would recommend 6x6s, as they seem to be the most efficient way to level and block up your trailer. Before we move around to the very front, we'll make note of your side marker light here. You'll notice that it's a little thicker than normal, and that extra thickness is for the pre-wiring for the side view camera. There's one located on both sides at the front, and then there is a rear view camera at the back. All 3 can be purchased separately. They're not included with the RV. Out front here we'll notice the battery storage area, and directly in front of the battery storage area we have your dual 30-pound propane bottle system connected with a crossover regulator. You'll note on the crossover regulator that the handle is pointing to this propane tank. So what that means is the regulator will draw propane from this tank first. Once this tank drops below a predetermined amount of pressure, and that's determined by the regulator and is not adjustable. So once this drops below that predetermined amount of pressure, it will automatically cross over and draw from the second tank, regardless of which way the handle is pointing on the regulator. That means that cold nights, if you're using the furnace and you run out of propane in the one bottle, you do not have to get out and manually switch it over. It'll do it all for you. So also at the front we have the electric tongue jack here. With this we have some switching. We have a nice light for hitch ups at night, and directly above that we have the switching to raise and lower the tongue via the electric jack. And then just a little bit further up from there we have the rubber stopper that, once removed, will give you access to the nut that you can then utilize the crank that I showed you previously in the front storage compartment. That way you're always able to raise and lower the tongue of the trailer, regardless of whether or not you have power or this is functioning properly. Also at the front we have your safety breakaway switch, and what that does is when this loop is attached to the tow vehicle, and the tow vehicle ever becomes separated from the RV, this pin will be pulled free of the housing, and that will engage the trailer brakes. So if you ever have an instance where the trailer brakes are on and they shouldn't be, especially if you've just done your hitch up and got your RV hooked up, I have seen it where this becomes partially pulled free of the housing, not enough for it to fully come out and for someone to notice it was engaged, but enough that it did actually engage the brakes. So just make sure that it's fully seated in the housing. And right next door to the safety breakaway switch, we have your solar ready connection point. This is where you can hook up your up to 20 amp solar panel. As we come along to the off door side, we'll just make a quick note of the second side marker light and its pre-wired camera housing for the side view camera. And we'll open the off door side of the pass-through storage compartment just to show you a couple things. In this area is where you generally find your power cord. You connect this end to the RV and this end to your campground or RV park power or your home. However, this is a 30 amp plug end. Most homes do not have a 30 amp plug on the outside of the home. For that instance, we have provided you with a conversion block that will convert the 30 amp plug end to a 15 amp plug end. Also in this area, we have your battery disconnect. When it is engaged, the disconnect will disconnect any draw from the battery. However, with these newer RVs, very rarely does it fully disconnect all power from the battery, as there are electronics inside that will draw some power from the battery, as well as some other things. So to make sure there is no draw at all on your battery, the best way and the only way really to do that, even with the disconnect, is to physically disconnect your battery at the front. Continue to make your way along the outside here. So the next thing we'll talk about is the black water output for your black and gray water. You'll see we have the valve handles here for your black and gray water tanks. Also, a little bit of advice, or what I hear people seem to like to do when you are emptying your tanks, make sure, or it's best practice to empty your black water first and then follow it up with the gray water, and that just helps flush any extra stuff out of the output. As we come around here, we'll make note, this is the 30 amp connection point for the RV, and directly above that we have the cable or satellite input for the RV. This is where you would connect from the campground's cable connection or your satellite dish. Right next to that we have your city water connection. The city water connection is where you connect the garden hose from either the RV park, campground, or your home. Once connected and the tap is turned on, this point will basically pressurize the entire RV exactly like your water system at home, and then you can use the water in the RV just like you would the water system in your home. Above that we have your black tank flush. Before you connect any water to this or turn any water on, make sure that you have your black water tank valve open, but also make sure you are connected to the sewage system at either the RV park or whatever it is that you're going to do the flush. Make sure you're fully connected to the system, open the valve, and then you can connect your water here and turn on the water to this connection point and flush out your black tank. Come on the back, we'll make note of your outdoor shower, and just below here we'll drop down and just make note of the location of the low point drains. We'll make note while we're at the back of the ladder access to the roof. And if we move to the center of the RV, previously we talked about the rear view camera when I was talking about the side view cameras. There's the housing for the pre-wired rear view camera. Again, it is not included, it is an extra that can be purchased at any time, and we'd be happy to install it for you, and we do carry them. They work with a head unit that can be viewed inside the tow vehicle while in transit or while stationary. It would give you great views of the side and rear of the RV. We come around to the door side again. We'll just show you your outdoor kitchen with refrigerator. We have lots of lighting. We have lots of prep space, and we have this handy drawer here, as well as this pretty cool Jayco inspired bottle opener. We'll make note of the 2 speakers under your awning. Those can be used in conjunction with the stereo inside. Out underneath your awning here, we have the venting for your refrigerator. It's important that this venting remains obstruction free at all times, as maximum airflow is needed for your refrigerator to operate properly. Directly below that we have the exhaust for the furnace, and it does say on it in several places hot, 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 but when it's out underneath your awning and there's a greater possibility of coming in contact with it, I just like to make a brief mention that it does actually get hot, so make sure you do not touch it. Directly beside the exhaust for the furnace is where you'll find your potable water fill point. If you're going somewhere, camping somewhere that doesn't have a water source or does not have a potable water source, ahead of time you can fill your potable water tank or your freshwater tank. And then once you get to where you're going and camping, you can use your onboard water pump to draw from the tank and pressurize the water system of the RV just like you were at home and connected to the city water. You'll also note that we have a cable output, 120 volt power, and a mounting bracket for television. It makes it really simple to watch TV underneath your awning here if you'd like. Now, we'd already spoke of your receiver for your grill, so we won't mention that again, but right above there we have the outside access to your hot water tank. In here you'll find a few things of note, one being your drain plug and anode rod. If you're ever removing this drain plug, always make sure you have this pressure relief valve open. It just relieves the pressure inside the tank, helping to ensure that this doesn't come shooting out at you like a rocket. Also in here, we have your reset to press in the event that you've tried to light the appliance, it hasn't lit, you may need to press the reset. Okay, the last thing I'm going to talk to about while I'm out here is the vent for your range. Just to make a quick note, there are these 2 tabs right here and here. When you're not using the RV, it's a good idea to keep these tabs locked and secure. However, when you're using your range hood, if you would like it to vent properly, you will have to undo those 2 catches. So that about does it for the outside. Let's step inside and we'll see what there is to talk about in here. One of the first things we'll make note of, fire extinguisher. It's always a good idea to know where all safety equipment is inside the RV, and I like the placement here just inside the door, easily accessible if you're cooking inside or out. And if we just swing around 180 degrees directly across from the fire extinguisher, we have your carbon monoxide propane alarm. You'll see right now there is a green light on the front that would indicate the system is working properly and ready to go. There is a button just above that green light that you can press to test the system. When you press that button, you'll hear a series of loud beeps. The light will change from green to red, and then when it's all done, the noise will stop and it'll be back to a solid green light if the system is working properly. Just something to note, if you do any painting in and around this sensor, a very good chance it will pick that up and sound an alarm for that. Now, as far as testing goes, it's a good idea to test it regularly. The way I would usually suggest that you do that is by testing it with your smoke detector, which is located right over here. That smoke detector is battery operated, and the recommendation is to usually change the batteries during daylight savings time or when we change our clocks. So I would suggest that we do the same with the carbon monoxide propane alarm. Something else that you'll see just inside the door here, when we were on the front tongue, we showed you the connection point for your solar panels. If you choose to do so, you can purchase a head unit to monitor that solar system that is pre-wired in this location right here, so it is fairly easy to install. That is extra and is an add-on, but we can do that for you. Also, one of my favorite features of this particular model, just inside the door there's a large closet with lots of space to hang coats, clothing, shoes, anything else that you might need to store. There's lots of room here. Before we go too much further in, I will take a second to talk to you about the J Command system. A lot of these new RVs, not all of them, but a lot are coming with J Command now. There's 2 different models as far as I know, or that's what we've seen so far in here. This is the smaller version, or J Command Lite, if you will. Essentially, I'm not going to show you everything in here. It would take way too long. That's a video in and of itself. I'll just show you the basic way to function and move around inside the J Command so you can kind of figure some stuff out for yourself. So there are multiple screens. So you see the first screen is a motor screen. In order to change to a different screen, we'll hit this top button on the left hand side, and that'll switch us through to different screens. Now once you're on a screen, if you would like to move up and down inside a screen, you would hit the select button, and that will filter you through all the different choices. Once you have the choice you want, in this case gas heater, you use these buttons on the side to do an action on this item. So in this case, gas water heater, the only action is to turn it on or off. So one of these buttons is on and one of them's off. So essentially that's how this works. You move through the screens with this, you move within the screen with this, and then you select your options with these. You also have some other buttons along here. These are basically shortcut buttons. This one does every light in the trailer, it seems, at least on the inside. This one will be a shortcut to your water pump, and this one is a shortcut to your screen with the AC and furnace controls. So as we step in, we'll hang a left here. We'll take a look at your bathroom. The most important thing to note in here is your Gfci for the unit. I'm not connected to 120 volt power at the moment, but if I was, you would see a light on there when this is tripped. You will notice some symptoms when this is tripped. So if you don't have power at any of your receptacles on the outside of the RV, or your receptacles that are near water, like the kitchen sink, then there's a good chance that they're on the load side of this Gfci and this has been tripped. So come here first, take a look and see. You can hit the top black button here to reset it, and there's a good chance that'll be what does the trick and gets your receptacles working again. So we step into the main area of the RV. We'll make a bit of a special note about your emergency exit for the main area here. It's pretty simple to operate. Flip these 2 tabs, the whole window swings open and you can escape to safety. No need to fight or mess around with any screens. When we were outside underneath the awning, we made mention of the speakers that are out there and how they could be used with the stereo. This is the stereo that I mentioned, and we can achieve the feat of listening to music out on our awning speakers, or underneath our awning anyways, by these zones, zone 1 and 2. Zone 1 will be the speakers on the inside of the RV, and zone 2 will be all the speakers on the outside. You can listen to them together or each one separately. As well as the dual zones, this particular stereo also has Bluetooth, HDMI, and auxiliary connectivity, as well as a USB charging port. One note to make with the TV is that we have a button here, right here, where the cable connects. It has a green light beside it. That is your signal booster for your antenna. It does wonders for your antenna, but does not work so well for your cable or satellite. It will interfere with your signal. So if you're trying to connect your cable or satellite and you find that it's not going very well, just take a quick look here and make sure that button isn't pressed. Next we'll talk a little bit about your refrigerator. It has an on-off button. Once it is pressed on, it basically has two settings. You can either have it on auto, which will choose between electricity and propane automatically, always choosing electricity if it's available, or you have a propane only. Now if you attempt to light on propane and it does not light, this check light will light up, indicating that something went wrong. Now some of the most likely culprits for why the fridge wouldn't light, the most likely is just not enough gas pressure in the lines, and that can be due to a few different reasons. One, you forgot to open the bottles on the front. That's very common. And then kind of panic because something's not working. So if it doesn't light, always go and make sure the bottles are open. If they aren't open, and if they are, do a couple other things. First, before you attempt to light the bigger appliances, the biggest thing I would do is I would come here and light your range top. Now what that will do is allow you to bleed some of the air out of the system before you try to light the bigger appliances. So in order to do that, you'll notice that I removed the glass top before I went to light it. Always do that or you'll end up with a broken glass top. Nobody wants that. So in order to light the range top, we'll turn it to the light position and then turn the sparking knob. You can do that for each one. And once you've done that and you've got them to light, there's a good chance you've purged most of the air out of the system, and then you can come back and attempt to light the refrigerator. And if the gas pressure was the issue, then it should light just fine. Also on your range top oven combo, we have the oven portion. In order to light the oven, we do the same thing. We turn it to the light position. The only difference here is we have to press and hold the knob in while you turn the sparking knob. So you do not need to light a pilot on this manually. It has an automatic sparker as well. The only difference is you must hold the knob in while you try to light it. Well, I'm already down here. You can see that I've got this access panel opened, and I have it open for a couple reasons. It normally would just sit like this. There's two red Robertson screws that I removed ahead of time. Wanted to take a look in here to show you your access to your water pump and the inside portion of your hot water tank. As far as the water pump goes, at the moment this is set to draw from your freshwater tank. So again, like I talked about, if you were filling your freshwater tank because you're going somewhere without a water source or without a potable water source, then you'll be using the water pump in this position to draw from your water tank. Now, if you were to turn it to this position, that would then divert the flow to your fill tube here. And this fill tube is what you would use to winterize your RV. Speaking of winterizing, now we'll talk about the two valves on the inside and the back portion of your hot water tank. We have this valve here and then the equivalent right here up top. At the moment they're pointed in towards the tank. That would indicate the water is going to flow in and out of the hot water tank. In order to winterize, we want to flip these valves so they are going this direction, and that's going to indicate that they're bypassing the tank, and therefore you're good to go ahead and winterize. The reason why we want to bypass the tank is that it has its own drain, so it's unnecessary to put antifreeze in it. And in order to fill the tank with antifreeze to pressurize the rest of the RV, you would use an awful lot of antifreeze. So there's no need for that. One item I'll show you hidden away on the countertop here, just to the left of your cooktop or range, is we have these neat little hidden plugs. So you pull that up, we have two USB charging ports as well as 120 volt power. So we move into the bedroom here. We're going to drop down and take a look at your load center. This is where you'll find your breakers, just like you'll see in your house, and they operate the same way, as well as your fuses, like you may see in your vehicle, and again, they operate in much the same way as they do in your vehicle. One neat thing here is that when there is an issue with one of the circuits, you will see a red LED light that lights up beside it. Inside the bedroom here, on each side of the bed, we have USB charging capabilities as well as 120 volt power and a little night light over to the side there. The blue light is handy because it does not attract the bugs in the same way. Also on this side of the RV we have another emergency exit. In order to utilize this emergency exit, we'll press down on the black tab, push the red handle over and out, bringing the handle perpendicular to the sidewall of the RV. You then push the handle all the way out. Once you've done that, you can pull this red tab, remove the screen, and you can escape to safety. Also in this area of the RV, you'll see that we have a mounting location. What this is indicating is that there is a solid surface behind here that you can mount the television bracket to, and there is already pre-wired for an output for your cable or satellite as well as 120 volt power. You'll also see that we have underbed storage supported by props. Those are always handy. Don't have to try to hold that up while you're throwing your luggage in there. And you can see, as I mentioned, that we have the USB connectivity as well as 120 volt power on this side of the bed as well. One thing I want to talk about, we had mentioned your thermostat was all part of that J command system. So with that thermostat, we can either have airflow to these various ports around the RV, or it can be centralized to here, and that is controlled by this baffling here. With the baffles open, it will allow the majority of the air to fall right here. With the baffles closed, it will force the majority of the air through these various ports located throughout the RV. That wraps up our virtual orientation today. As I always say at the end of these videos, I'm bound to miss something that was important to you, and I do apologize for that. I try to cover as much as I can and get as much information in here without making these too long or too boring. So if there's something I missed that was important to you, I do apologize. Please give us a call and we'll do our very best to make sure we answer your question and have you being comfortable when you take your RV out for the first time. Thank you.